folks, I know there's a history here. I'd like to get this hearing in today. You know, everybody needs to just focus on the relevant facts, okay? I know there's a history here.
Are you talking up by Sunset Mart? Up the hill by the gas station?
Yeah.
Okay. Why did you? All right. Who's responsible here?
What's that?
Who's responsible here? Whose house is this?
Yeah, I haven't been drinking or anything, right?
No.
Okay. Drive careful, okay?
Thank you.
This is what the other group had that ran away.
Oh, really? You just ditched it? Awesome.
Yeah, those ones kept walking in the car. And the other one.
It's truly for the win.
That I was given to. So there was 2 different discs. Okay? They all knew about it.
We're not here to talk about the alcohol stuff, okay?
Okay, yeah.
But this is the second noise complaint we've had here tonight within 2 hours.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Is this your place?
Yeah.
Perfect. You know why we're here?
And I see noise.
Noise, yeah.
Yeah.
Big speaker right there.
Yeah.
Nothing against having a party. Once neighbors start calling in, then we have an issue.
Like brains, and like if you need a lot of brains, you're gonna be in trouble.
What is up, Daniel?
How's it going? How's it going?
Just chilling over here in it's not too cold yet, so Ohio's treating me well. How's where are you? You don't have to say where you're at. I don't want to dox you.
Well, I'm in the South and it's above 90 today again. So it
You
is what
lucky
it is.
Bastard.
Nah, man. I'm looking forward to the cooler times, but that's probably not going to be for another week or so.
Okay. So we get to do part 2. Everybody's been waiting for, us to do part 1, part 2, part 9. So since they're all like waiting, I just have a something to tell all of you guys as well as Daniel is that tonight you guys get a treat. I lost a bet to Daniel only because Nick Chubb broke his leg. So we made a bet preseason. It was before preseason. It was like at the end of summer, right?
Yeah, around that time.
We said that if the Browns beat the Steelers, he has to wear a Browns jersey. And if the Steelers beat the Browns, I have to wear a Steelers jersey. So I went above and beyond to keep my end of the bet. And how I did this is it's a part 1 and 2. So tonight is me basically making good on that bet in a different way that leads into my part 2, which is the next time I go live when I'm in PA, and I'm going to go in front of fucking that damn stadium.
Nice.
Okay.
It's a beautiful stadium.
And talk about my fucking loss. But tonight kicks off the paying back of my bet because I believe in keeping my word, number 1. But number 2, I want the opportunity for Daniel to bet me again and for us to like up the stakes a little bit. So, but I'm going to keep my word. So I have to do a live in a Steelers jersey, which is actually going to happen out front of in Pittsburgh. I'm going to do it. I'm doing a reenactment out there. So I'm going to go actually out in front of your stupid fucking stadium.
There's a part right there outside of the stadium. There's a memorial. It's where Franco Harris caught the Immaculate Reception in old Three
Yes.
River Stadium.
Yeah,
That
something like
I
that.
don't know what you're gonna do, but that would be a good place too.
Blah, 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 blah. And then just to give you something tonight, because we were doing this like double feature,
Mhm.
I said, okay, well, I'll give you something tonight that is a token of my hey, I lost you one. So we'll get to that. That's the
Awesome.
fourth quarter. So that'll be right there at the end of the whole hour. So it'll be right around 10:30. I have this surprise. So, but up until then, we are in full debate mode. Man, this is like the presidential election right here.
You know it. You know it.
So
That's
how
why
we're
we're
gonna
doing
kick,
it now.
right? So how we're gonna do this is you're gonna write your questions in chat. We're both gonna I have a little stupid timer on my phone like everybody else does. But I'm gonna go ahead and hit play on the timer. Me and Daniel both get 1 minute on the clock to give our, opinion on that one topic. And then we'll move on to the next question. This actually gets you guys just as much as involved as me and Daniel. Again, please, all we ask is that me and Daniel respect each other, and we can have difference of opinions all day long. That doesn't change like how we feel about each other as people. So, and if you don't know that and know how that works in life, I don't know, like that's your problem. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a you thing. That ain't a we thing here. So here we go. But so throw your questions in the live chat feature. We'll grab it out, and then it's 1 minute per person. So again, yeah, thank you there, Susan. Here we go. We'll start off with this question. Does anyone think the machete at the house was used and not a K-bar? You want to go first or second?
I'll go whichever one. You're hosting. You let me know.
Okay, so I'm
I
home
don't
team.
mind. Yeah.
Okay, then I kick the ball to you.
All right. So let me know when the timer goes.
Okay, ready and live.
No. No, I don't think that the machete was used that was pictured in the house. I think that if you had some sort of if it was the machete, then all the wounds on every person would be extremely large. If you found smaller stab wound to it, then that would kind of discredit everything that goes along with the possibility that it is a machete. I know that a lot of folks will look at the damages or the injuries to the person and say, hey, the coroner or the ME said that the injuries were different or they had multiple different types of wounds. Well, that's also because the knife can get while it's being utilized in this manner. For instance, it could hit a bone and bend and the tip can chip off, things like that. And if those things end up happening, that would create a different type of wound than the initial wound when the knife was perfectly still sharpened and straight, if that makes sense. So I think there's enough evidence here that the prosecution and law enforcement had to indicate that it was probably a fixed blade knife and not anything larger. Boom, done.
All right. Well, my answer to this, I want you guys to hear it ring. So it's official. We have a little timer. I do have my minute, but honestly, all I want to say about this minute is I'm going to give some weight to Mr. Gonsalves's statements that he said when he said that the wounds were different. Their point of damage didn't match. Now, either he was saying that because somebody said that to him. He was saying that because he was drunk and didn't know what someone said to him, which I don't think is the case. But I think that if he's going based off of what the coroner said to him, and if the coroner flat out, if I paid for that, I paid for that. I think that depending on, you're really going to have to, I think that the defense could go with that it was a different weapon, or at least that some of the wounds were a different weapon. So I'm going to go ahead and go with Steve here, and I'm going to say that the the points of damage don't match, the type of damage doesn't match. So there we go. Both questions in and answered.
Awesome. Let's do it.
All right. Next up, let's see what we got here. Let's see. Next question here. Whoopsies, I hit the wrong one. Oh, there it is. Do you think Kaylee was in her room and came out when she heard something and said someone is here, and BK attacked her more severely, and that explains dog left in room? Since you went first on the last one, I'll go first here. Again, a minute on the clock. Whoop, whoop. I'm going to go with that everything in the PCA as far as hearsay goes, I'm throwing that out the door. So anything that's in the PCA, I'm going out the door with. So anything that's in the PCA that's hearsay, and that would be hearsay of what Dylan thought she heard or anything to do with Dylan, I'm completely throwing it out. And I want to read the PCA as if there was no hearsay. That's my answer.
Okay.
Answered that within 30 seconds. So
Right.
I will resume it here for you, though. Cancel and start. Again,
Yeah.
do you think Kaylee was in her room and came out when she heard and said someone is here?
No.
And BK attacked her more severely.
Right. No, I think she was asleep in Maddie's room. What we know is that she was a friend. They ended up coming home. They ended up calling the boyfriend on 2 different phones. And, you know, these girls were friends, very small, sister-like. I don't find it impossible that they unplannedly came home intoxicated, not planned to go to sleep in the same room, but ended up going to sleep in the same room. I also want to put in text that they got home around 2 o'clock in the morning. If Murphy was in his room that he normally sleeps and was asleep, I don't see a person going in and waking up their dog at 2:30 in the morning just to go sleep with them in a smaller bed. Yeah, it really doesn't make any sense for that aspect. So I'm pretty positive that she fell asleep in that room, and that may have not been the only time that they've done this. It may have been a common reoccurrence. So,
all right. So question 2 in the books. Gonna bring it back your way here. What do y'all think the motive was? Are you ready?
yeah, I'm ready. Good question. So when it comes, go ahead. All right. So
No,
when it
you're
comes
good.
to the
You're
motive, my opinions are that, well, first and foremost, I can't remember who it was. I think it was maybe Dateline or somebody. They had one of Bryan Kohberger's friends come on and show some of the text messages, the conversation that they had. And he had alluded that during this time, going and becoming a criminologist, that he was interested in solving big crimes, wanted to solve high profile crimes. Well, he was going through a bunch of crap at the time of the murders happening. He was about to get fired from his TA's job, or was at least going through some issues that would end up, firing him. And I think the motive was to, basically embarrass law enforcement in the area and create the biggest unsolved crime, and be a part of that. He talked about high profile crimes. And I think that's the reason why, when you think other vehicles being parked there, like, why would he go into a house where there's other vehicles parked there? Unless the motive was to create the bigger crime, right? So if one person who's young and attractive passes away, all right, that's only so much, but to get a bigger crime, people.
All right. So motive is, at the end of the day, to get away with the biggest unsolved crime in history.
High profile, the biggest, highest high profile. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm on the clock with the same question, which is, what do y'all think the motive was? Well, I think the motive hasn't been found out yet. I think that this is a narrative, and that's not a motive. So what we're seeing here is a narrative and not a motive. And so therefore, without seeing all of the evidence, I can't tell you what the motive was, but I can tell you what the police narrative is. And that's all we see right here is a police narrative, which is that he was a stalker, and he was stalking, this house or somebody in there, or multiple people in there. And I don't believe that is motive right now. That is a narrative, because that motive, based on the documents, it doesn't add up. He has no ties. He was not following these people, everything. He did not know these people, everything like that. So what I see is a narrative as far as why they are murdered at this moment in time. Again, I don't have the evidence. If I did, I'd probably give an opinion, but we have a narrative. That's what I feel.
Can't get a
So,
response.
You want a response to the narrative? Yeah.
Yeah, I want a response to what you had said.
Okay. We'll make it official.
Before we start, just remind me the first part of what you said, because it was the first part that you had mentioned something.
I said that
this was the
I
police
believe
narrative.
that there's a narrative right now, not motive.
Right. And that you know what, it's fine. Let's just go to the next one. I forgot where I was at, but I wanted to respond. I need to write this down. I
love you.
It'll
right now I see a narrative. Right now I see a narrative being sold to the public, because if Bryan Kohberger was a serial killer, yeah, he's just everybody's unsafe. So here we go. Cancel start. Next question, but hold on, we need a question. Hold on,
I do remember what I was going to say. If you want to let me read,
okay,
respond. All right, let me know when it's ready.
Okay, yeah, go.
All right. So when it comes to the search warrants that were searched about Bryan Kohberger afterwards, a lot of the stuff indicated and stated that they felt that this was done meticulously. The planning was done to a certain in-depth, that they were figuring to find certain things out. Now, whether they found them or not is regardless of the point of where they think that they're going with this. I think that somebody who has, some prior knowledge in technological forensics would understand, not to put some things on his personal devices. But I do think that the police were anticipating finding out, certain planning tools. So based on the search warrants that have come out, it does certainly appear that this was not necessarily a stalking incident, but something that this person had planned to do. And I think they even use a certain terminology that referenced it being like a big party or something of that nature, like the surprise or whatnot, that, somebody that had created this and gone into this depth would have saved items.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna stay with what I have right now. We have a narrative. We have no evidence. We have a narrative, and I think that's the way the cops want it. So, this question I think is good, though. This question I think is good. Does anyone here know if there is truth to the mention that it was their ex-roommate Hannah's anniversary of her death or her birthday? The reason I wanted to pick this one is because it has to do with like the rumorville. So think of this question, Daniel, with any type of other rumor that we've heard. So when I say like a rumor, I'm talking like the Oregon car, like anything that would be like from the rumor mill of we had to, oh, hey, this rumor, when they came out and talked about the rumors. So this question is going to go to like, do you put any stock into any of the rumors that we've heard? And if there is one that you think is worth mentioning, what do you want to say about it? Does that make sense?
Right.
Okay. Did you go first that time? Right. Okay.
Yeah, I did go first.
Okay. So to answer this about Hannah, I don't believe that Hannah was anybody's roommate. I don't believe that anybody lived at Baker Street. I don't believe that Hannah was anybody's roommate, just to answer that. Do I believe that things going on at the university were covered up and maybe not investigated? Absolutely. That's sorority life. That is fraternity life. 100. They will look the other way. Again, so to say, is there any stock into this? There could be, but I don't believe that any of these people were Hannah's roommates, if that makes sense. Any of the rumors out there, I think the biggest rumor that's been out there is the whole Brent Kopaka, due to the fact that he was killed and shot down outside of Pullman or in Pullman, where it's outside of Moscow. So I think that's the biggest, most interesting fact that has happened during this whole thing, because it had to do with roommates. His roommate said that he was, so that to me is your biggest point of contention, would be the Brent Kopaka.
Right.
And to you, ready?
Yeah.
There you go.
No, I don't put any stock into any of the rumors. And the main reason being is because law enforcement investigate those rumors. And if there was any truth to it, it'd be found out pretty quick. right? There would be some clues to the situation if somebody was involved. Like for instance, and to take this situation out of it, if you saw an open window, on the second floor of a building and the doors are locked from the outside, and you're wondering how somebody may have made entry into it, and with the door locked, let's just say it was locked some weird way, you would have to then look around the floor, and if you would see clues of something ladder that would be going up. Well, when you have something like this where hey, there's a person that may have been responsible for this case, then you would go and look at their history and say, all right, if this person committed this crime, well, they would have had to be in Moscow on November 13th and see if they were in town. All right, they were in town. If they were in town, they'd have to have access to a white Elantra. Boom, check that out. And if they did, and just kind of go down the line in the process of elimination.
Okay. All right, so here we go. Ready?
Let's do it.
Do you think the DNA came first or the car came first?
Me?
So
the DNA.
Okay, so hold on one second. And go. Did the DNA or the car in your reasoning?
The DNA definitely came first. The reason being is, one, I don't think they changed the vehicles. You're the vehicle for a reason. It's because they didn't know about it until afterwards. I don't think they had a clear video of the vehicles, of the vehicle that was in question from any of the Moscow video. It's probably off in the video from Pullman that was able to indicate that it was specifically 13 to 16. And so also, we know from the state's response that basically from the Department of Justice that their own procedures indicate that you can't use the IGG unless there's no lead. So they had no idea that it was Kohberger until they got that back. And plus, if you had Kohberger's name, you really don't even need to do the IGG tree. All you have to do is just do an abandonment type of thing where you take a piece of trash or whatever and go and test it. You don't need to do a tree. So the tree is only used specifically if they have no idea who it is, and then to get a name. And so I think the DNA came first.
So he goes with the DNA came first. Okay, perfect. Let me restart. Okay. I believe that the DNA, I believe that the name Bryan Kohberger came first. The name Bryan Kohberger came first. I believe that the name was handed over and they said, we cannot use the way that we got this. You have to get to him a different way, because it was breaking every rule in the book, whether they had planted the DNA or whether they had used a loophole. Either way, this is going to be inadmissible if this is ever to come to light. I believe that this was known on or before 11/24/2022. And when they got the name Bryan Kohberger, they saw that he owned a white Hyundai Elantra. And I believe that they messed up the years on purpose, not realizing what the fucking implications were between the difference between a 2011, 2013, 2014, 15, 16. But you have to work this case backwards because you can't use what the informant gave you. So.
What informant?
The FBI.
Okay.
Like when they said the name Bryan Kohberger, like it'd be like anything. You can't use us. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't give that name. You can't say where you got that from. And otherwise it's going to cause a big fucking problem because we got it and we obtained it either illegally or we planted it. So.
I mean, isn't the IGG kind of looked at as like the same thing you do with a lie detector test? So like if somebody uses a lie detector test and they fail it, that doesn't mean that you can use it against them in court, but that gives you an idea that that person might have done something so that you can go and investigate them. It doesn't necessarily mean that law enforcement did something negative because a person.
No, it does. It does because you can't, as law enforcement, you can't go and utilize the databases as law enforcement because there's all these profiles that were opted out. Meaning, like,
well, how do we know that they used it? How do we know that they used it?
That's what my argument is. My argument is saying that they did, and my argument is that's what the defense argument is that we have people testifying here because you guys won't talk about it and you guys won't toss over that tip to say so that we can vet it. You have to be able to vet your tips if it is in fact a tip. If you're going to say that, hey, this is just a tip, then it is under discovery, and discovery is allowed to be vetted. If you want to clause or claim privilege then you're going to have to claim this as this isn't a tip. Then you get what I'm saying? Like, how are you claiming privilege on this? That's the debate.
The reason why it's considered a tip is because the FBI test Bryan Kohberger's actual DNA to the DNA on the sheath. So regardless of anything, what they did was they took the DNA and what they were supposed to do, whether they did it or not, I don't know. And I don't think anybody knows whether or not they used that opted out or opted in. You know, by law, they're supposed to use the ones that are opted in. You know, just because they don't want to show their work doesn't necessarily mean that they did something wrong. It just means that the prosecution doesn't have that work. You know, that work was the FBI. And since the FBI didn't actually test the DNA to the sheath, then there's no way, and they didn't give it to Moscow, and all they gave them was a name. How is that Moscow's fault that some department?
We didn't say that it was Moscow's fault. We didn't say it was Moscow's fault. We're saying that it should be discovered. It should be considered discovery, which means that we get to investigate how the name Bryan Kohberger came up. That's all.
So let's just say that happens, right? And let's say, hey, we need to, we want to have this DNA information, and then you get the IgG report, right? And they show that there's a mishandling, or you know, they use databases that they shouldn't have. Mm-hmm. What should they do with that IgG report then?
What do you mean? That there's not like a report like that. That's not.
Yeah,
how
there is a workup. There's a genetic tree workup. They want to know, you know.
Well, that's the thing, is that they're saying that there isn't one.
Hold on. They want to know which.
Okay, well, we're gonna move on from this because me and you are both gonna disagree on it.
No, I know, but I want to explain it. I want to explain this real quick. What they're going to do is what Kohberger wants to know is they want to know which individual relatives were matched by the DNA that they used, and if they opted in or out of
that's not what they're asking
program. Right? Yeah. Well, yeah, they are, because if somebody, like, let's just say it's Bryan Kohberger's uncle, if he ended up opting out of the deal there, and they used his information illegally, so you're trying to say, hey, they used this guy's profile without him opting in, so that should be thrown out.
That's not what they want to know. They want to know the whole. They want to know the whole steps. Who did you go through? Did you put it in as a law enforcement profile? Did you put it in as
let's say that they
consumer?
Didn't. All right, let's say that they put it as a consumer.
But that's
what can you do with that information? What can you, and I can, if you share my screen, I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. But what can they do? What can be done? Like, let's just say, all right, they say,
we're gonna get back to that. I promise you at the end here, I have something for you. I promise.
Okay.
Deal? Trust me.
Okay.
Because that was a lot. Like, we're gonna save that the DNA part here to the end, so that way we can get through other stuff. Otherwise, you could have like a 3-hour debate on that. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is how I just look at it. At the end of the day, if you did everything on the up and up, then there should be no issues, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you also didn't commit a crime, then there shouldn't be anyone looking into your DNA and stuff. I mean, that card can be played both ways.
No, not when you're being accused of murder.
No, what you're saying is that.
What are you talking about? That's what I'm saying. Like, give me the stuff.
And I'm not saying that they shouldn't, but what I'm asking, because
we're going to hear about it. We're going to hear all about it. We're going to hear all about it.
You see, and this is why, like, you know, if I show this one screen, this would explain everything that I'm saying. It's just like, I'm not saying that they shouldn't get it. I agree.
I got something for you. I promise. All right. Deal. Trust me on that. I promise. Okay. So here we go. Moving on to here we go. Where do you believe the entry point was into the house? So entry point of the house. And go. Is it my turn or your turn to go first?
I think it's your turn. Okay.
Entry point into the house. I'll go first here and started it. The entry point to the house. I know everybody thinks that they're going backdoor slider. I don't. I think the entry point to the house would be on that main floor. I think that was the entry point to the house. The only reason I think that is that if Bethany did not sleep upstairs and she slept downstairs, that's why she has mass motherfucking exculpatory evidence, is to do with the entry and exit point of the killer. And that would have to do with the blood. If you are walking down the stairs and you see blood droppings. So I believe that if Bethany was sleeping down on the first floor, if she at any point in time moved as well. They don't talk about anything that Bethany did, but I do believe that the entry and exit point is the front door. Okay, ready?
Okay.
And go. And
Yeah, I
hold on.
think
Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm pretty sure the back sliding glass door is the entry point. I know that the events keep saying that Bethany has this exculpatory evidence. However, when it came down to trying to, I can't remember which paperwork it was, but they wanted to be, I think it was with the alibi. They said that the alibi had to do with, they were going to pull it out of somebody else that the prosecution puts up. If they're sort of anti-alibi, something that excludes him, wouldn't you say that that's the person that is going to exclude who your client, and not just have it for the preliminary hearing, but also have it for the actual court? That's where I have a question about it. It seems to me that they're throwing up the exculpatory evidence category because they're saying, hey, if my client is innocent, then there should be exculpatory evidence, and we don't have it. It's telling us he's innocent, so you must be hiding it. And that's really probably not the way it looks. It's probably not even there.
Digging it. The question about, now this question only has to do with who do you think the two unknown inside the house DNAs belong to? Do you think that those are relevant or irrelevant? Just in terms of like, not, you get what I'm saying? Not talking about if they were tested, just talking about like, do you think that these are relevant or irrelevant pieces? Like the two unknown male DNAs. Okay.
All right. I go first this time, right?
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
And
let me know.
go, yeah.
It solely depends on where exactly they were found. The defense paperwork states that they were found in an area where two of the bodies were, and that could be anywhere in the room that two of the bodies were. And we do know that they had somewhere to 150 people or so. Let's just say that's exaggerated. If they had 90 people in that house before on a for a party and they didn't clean up, which there's evidence that they didn't clean up. You can see a beer pong table throughout one of the wood doors with beers and cups pulled over, and you can just see a whole mess from the party the night before. So I thought they cleaned up everything, or if anything at all, and they didn't have a party that night. So I think that there's a good possibility that you might find DNA from people that were at that party that they haven't identified, that aren't related. I think that if there is something in that room and it's like on a dresser or on the mirror somewhere about 5, 6, 7, 10 feet away from the bodies, I think the DNA underneath the victim's body means more.
Okay. Let me put the timer on. Okay. 100%. I believe that the amount of DNA that they took from everybody that they knew, they were asking people, hey, will you turn over your DNA? Yes. Will you download your phone? Yes. So they get to the point of whatever they are able to get DNA off of, whatever they tested, there comes back two unknown males. I believe that they know about this. I believe that it is unknown male semen, and I believe that they are hiding it because it will, they're not going to do that to a victim or possibly a surviving roommate. But at the end of the day, I do believe that this unknown DNA, it may not even be unknown to the police. Could it be unknown to the prosecutor? Sure, because they're just playing fiddle fucks on how they're passing along information, aka discovery. But I do believe it's important because of somebody's in your house. So who's been in your house before? You should know everybody. So you're going to be asking the people that live with you who's been in your house, and you're going to start checking people off. But I believe it has something to do with semen.
I got a question for you. What do you think that the Moscow Police Department is holding over the Idaho State Lab, that they would disregard their integrity, their views, their possibly and jeopardize their position or any of those things if they found something like semen or something else and they decided to hide it for the Moscow Police Department? I mean, to ask
I don't think they're
somebody,
hiding it from Moscow Police Department.
no, not from, for,
No, I don't think
because
they're hiding it for them. I don't think that. No. When I say that they're hiding it, I just mean like they're not talking about it in terms of like, um, as long as the prosecutor doesn't have it, it's not considered. He's not turning something over. He can't. There's no. I don't have this Brady violation coming at me. Like if I don't have it, if it's in some Dropbox somewhere that went to some email, some crazy ass bullshit like that they should do. But I don't think that this has anything to do with. This has to do with preserving their case. This doesn't have to do with,
but
this is way
regardless,
bigger
they're
picture.
preserving Moscow's case or whatever the case.
Because
would
I
be.
think that they
It
would have already talked to the person if it was semen. I think that they would have already talked to these people. They know who actually maybe it belongs to. They're just not talking about it. And so therefore the defense would have to follow that. The defense would have to, like, they're just waiting to get, like, let us test it. Let us see, let us start working on some stuff. If you're not going to give us, whatever you may have. When they're saying we don't have it, I can't give you something we don't have. I'm sorry, but if I'm a parent and you got some unknown male DNA and my kid was just murdered, what do you mean you didn't test it? What do you mean you didn't do this? You would have done stuff with that. Why wouldn't that be just as important? Again, it depends on, are we talking about it was on the box of a fucking Amazon package that was delivered, or are we talking about that it was in the location of where these victims were? So at the end of the day, I believe that they could have already ruled these people, found out who they were. When the defense thinks that there's unknown male DNA, it's because, again, it could have been the FBI doing the same type of thing with, here, we get you a name on that. If you can get a name like Bryan Kohberger on the one piece, why can't you get a name on the other pieces? So,
well, there's a couple of things, or reasons why. One, the DOJ policy, if you have a lead, the FBI can no longer get involved. Now, once that has been exhausted, and like, let's just say they tested one of those DNA profiles first and it came back Big Blue, right? And so, all right, they got a name, they go check Big Blue, and they find out that Big Blue was there the night of November 12th, but, the night of November 11th leading up to the 12th for that big party. And they know that on the afternoon of the 12th, that Big Blue flew back to San Antonio, Texas, right? So they know that there is absolutely no possible way that Big Blue, although his DNA is in the house, and they can come up with a reason as to why it is, and also, clear him, then they can move on to the next person and do a tree on that. Now, my assumption, and it is an assumption, is that if those two DNA samples were not semen and were perhaps touch DNA also, but on an item in the room, like a dresser or something else, then the priority list would go the DNA on the sheath. So I think that would be the DNA they would send first to the lab to test. And once they came back with the name Bryan Kohberger and they couldn't exclude him from being a suspect, then he got it, so they can't go and test those things. And this wasn't a test that was created by the prosecution or Moscow law enforcement or anything.
well, I got something
FBI.
for us, because I know we want to talk about all this DNA stuff. We can't talk about the Bryan Kohberger case, but let's talk about some DNA stuff. What is up, Miss Gabrielle Vargas? How are you? Oh, wait, I think you're on mute. I can unmute you. Let me see if that works.
Sorry, didn't want you all to hear my children screaming in the background.
So this is our fourth quarter right here for you, Daniel. This is my gift to you. I know that you want to go ham over this DNA. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
we cannot talk about the Bryan Kohberger case, but let's talk about some DNA stuff.
We can do hypotheticals.
Okay, let's do some hypotheticals.
Okay. I'd love to ask you.
This is Daniel. Daniel's a good dude.
Hi,
Gabrielle Vargas,
Daniel.
Daniel from Drunk Turkey.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. I caught y'all's live last time. I did. Well, not me. My wife did.
Don't let him lie to you.
Congratulations. Is this your first one?
No, this is my third daughter. So I'm blessed with nothing but girls.
There you go.
Oh, I've got 4, 2 and 2.
Nice.
So, I'm done though. My oldest is 24 and my youngest is 6. So what the hell was I thinking?
Right. Well,
So
yeah,
give it to me. What is your DNA questions?
Yes.
All righty. So my first DNA question is, well, one, outside of this case or in general, have you ever worked with the FBI? Just in general.
I have not worked directly with the FBI, but I have worked cases in which the FBI was involved, or with a detective with whom was working an IGG case with the FBI and needed assistance.
Nice. No, is it common for law enforcement to ask for the services of somebody that could create an S&P profile if they have a suspect?
Is it okay? Let me.
Is it common for law
So
enforcement to request?
yes and no. Okay. So you have to take a couple things into consideration. The first one being, this is a new technology, like 2018 technology, right? So there are some protocols that are in place, but they're just guidelines by the Department of Justice. One of those is that law enforcement should exhaust all other options prior to turning to IGG. Okay. So a lot of what we're used to are cold cases, right? These are the cases that have been sitting for a long time, and they're so desperate to solve them. It's in my opinion only been in recent times, and again, this is a very short window because we're talking recent of this field being started in 2018, and then even more recent with cases that are current to be using IGG. Right. So many agencies are still essentially trying to close their cold cases, right?
But if you have DNA, right, that's unknown, and you have a suspect in mind, what would probably be the preferred, to create a tree on the DNA or to do a trash pickup and test the DNA of the suspect directly to the DNA profile?
Okay, I think that there is a lot of misconception about what we do and how we do it, and whether or not we don't just create trees, right? So if I were to create a tree on someone who is believed to be the suspect, that does me no good. All that does is give me their family tree, their family history, right? I have to have something to compare it to, right? So I'm trying to make sure this light's not in your face there. So essentially, when this is usually the process, law enforcement will reach out to someone like myself who provides this service. Not always when all other methods have been. I'm going to whoop your ass. Don't do that. You know, it's like you can't. Kids, I tell you. Okay. So not always when other methods have been exhausted. So if they reach out to me and say, hey, I've got a Jane Doe and I need your help, and they just found her, like an hour ago, I still have provided services for cases like that.
Right. No, I understand that. And what I'm asking though more is like the suspect aspect versus, a cold case or somebody who's a Jane Doe. Like for instance, if somebody committed a crime, against me, and Lena is the suspect, and law enforcement are aware and have her as a suspect, what would be the purpose to create a tree on the DNA if they could just do a trash pull on Lena and compare the DNA directly? I think that, one can be more used in court. The direct testing is one that could be directly used in court. I'm not sure if an IgG tree makeup would be something that would be usable in court, given the fact that if they never test the actual DNA on an item, to a suspect, and all they've done is create a possibility based on a tree. I don't see how that's usable in court. Does that make sense?
It depends. So there's somebody's saying IgG is almost never used for current cases because it's inadmissible. That is absolutely false. I don't know where they're getting their information. But what I do want to say is your Fourth Amendment right does not protect you from trash pool. Okay. Right. So typically, if you are the suspect, yes, they can go and do a trash pool if they believe, they don't need to have probable cause. It's you put it on the curb. Anybody can go through the trash.
You said you have to put it on the curb?
Well, it needs to be, yes, in a public location. So it needs to be on the curb, or if I go to Starbucks and I have a drink and I leave it for the barista to take back, I have no expectation.
But like if you were at your house, and you have your garbage at your house, on your yard, in your lawn.
If it's on my property, it's a different story. If I have put it to the curb waiting for the trash man, they are free to take it. So here's the thing. The first thing we're going to do when we have,
we're talking trash. Sorry.
The first thing we're going to do when we have a crime scene is we're going to take that DNA and we're going to create an STR profile.
Oh, wait, hold on. Let me back up really quick. Welcome to the show, Miss Gabrielle Vargas. She is an expert. What do you want me to call yourself? A cold case investigator with the, what do you want me to say?
You can say whatever you like.
Okay. So just in case anybody wants to know why this person is so damn important up here.
I am involved in the Kohberger case. I cannot speak as to my involvement in that case. I do have my own company, DNA ID, in which I work these cold cases and even newer cases for law enforcement, medical examiners, etc. So I have firsthand knowledge because I do this. This is my job. I have never gotten a case wrong. I have been successful in all of my cases. So I'd like to say that there is some credibility to the things that I have to say. To finish answering your question, the first thing that's always done is an STR profile is created. That profile only requires, they're only looking for, specific markers, depending on what state you're in, 17, 20 markers that are very specific to an individual, okay? What we do is we do sequencing on the entire genome of the person. So I can get so much more information doing whole genome sequencing than I can do an STR profile. But if somebody says, let's just say, Carlos Vasquez was the guy who committed the crime because I know him. Yes, there are other investigative methods that law enforcement could use, like doing a trash pool, instead of going through the process of doing investigative genetic genealogy.
Right. And I think it would probably be easier, faster, quicker results if you just do the trash pool versus sending some DNA off of a banana peel that was left at a scene somewhere, and then having to break down, family members, relatives, and the whole 9 yards. Does that sound accurate, that it would be quicker response?
Yes, I would agree. It would likely be a quicker response. The problem is that most of the time, people don't live alone, right? Mm-hmm. So you are looking for, let's say, the husband, but the husband and the wife and their children and his parents also live there. So the problem with that is we're doing multiple trash pulls. We're not just doing one. We can't confirm. Also, the second thing to this, which I have found in another case that I have worked, I have the confirmation was made early on that via trash, that this individual was in fact the suspect. It was actually a mother of an abandoned, deceased baby boy. The problem is she lived with her sister, who could potentially also have been a suspect. They share the same DNA, right? So
Yeah.
the suspect of the baby and the suspect of, or the parent of the baby, how are they going to differentiate whose DNA is on the trash?
Right.
Because it
Right. No, I
only does
understand
STR profiling. It doesn't say, hey, it's not the person, but it's the person's aunt, which is what I can do, right?
Right.
But what I do takes more time.
So my next question is, if you're working with a law enforcement agency that holds integrity, that is doing things by the book, and they can, you can't test anything until all leads have been exhausted. If you have multiple samples or multiple DNA samples and one comes back as a lead, are you allowed to investigate the other 2 samples or 3 samples or 4 samples that are there? Or do you have to wait for that lead to be exhausted, whether it's, cleared or arrested, before you can move on to the next sample?
What lead are you referring to? The lead that I would provide doing
Right. Well,
my work?
let's just say that there's a crime scene, and at this crime scene, I'm deceased, and you have DNA on a hammer over here that belongs to one person, and DNA on a wrench over here that belongs to another person. Now, if I were to get if I was the law enforcement agency and I gave you the first DNA sample on the hammer, can you do a genetic tree on the second one if there's a possible lead in the first one?
I can do whatever law enforcement asks me to do, but typically that's so typically what happens is when a crime is committed, an STR profile is obtained. Okay. If the suspect left blood or semen or whatever at the scene of the crime, an STR profile is created. That is done at their own crime lab. Then they would take the wrench, they would take the hammer, and they would do another STR profile on those 2 items of the hammer and the wrench to see which matches the STR profile of the DNA that was left at the scene of the crime. Then that would be the DNA that we would send to the third party lab to do the sequencing on. But we have also done multiple. It's a costly thing to run through these third party labs. Okay. That's the first thing you should know. The second thing you should know is that the state crime labs and the local crime labs can do some of this, but not all of it. They can run a quick comparison. It's not going to tell them who it is, but it's going to let them know, does this profile that we found at the scene match these items that we've collected? And if the answer is yes, that's going to be the item that we're going to send to the lab. And we're going to ask the lab first, look, I've got a maxi pad, which could have, semen on it, but I also have the panties, but I also have a swab from the deceased woman. What do you prefer? What is your best chance of getting a good profile out of these 3 options? And we leave it to them.
And if they come up with a lead, does that mean because according to DOJ policy, and this, I guess, maybe could only be preference to the FBI. I don't know if maybe perhaps, law enforcement or police departments or Idaho State or Nevada State Police or Pennsylvania State Police have different rules to government and federal agencies. But from my understanding, by DOJ policy, when it comes to a genetic tree and their ability to make one up, it's when there is no lead and the person is unknown. So when I read that, I felt that if you have a lead, well, 1, you can't do it. And 2, if the person is known, I mean, you have the STR profile that you have made up. to connect to that person. The other question I have is, what if DNA is a mixture? Can you run a tree on a mixture sample?
Okay, so I think one thing that you are confused about is this running of a tree. Okay, so I just want to clarify. What happens first is the DNA is either extracted from their state crime lab or their local crime lab, and then it is sent to like a third party lab that I contract with. Okay,
Right. No, I understand.
When it's sent to that third party lab and the DNA goes through whole genome sequencing, and a genetic profile of an unidentified individual is what comes out of the lab. It's called a FASTQ file. Okay, that file has the genetic makeup of the unknown contributor. Okay, that is then uploaded to these genetic genealogy databases like FTDNA and GEDmatch to then be able to work and start and create the trees. Okay, right. So if there is a mixture, okay, let's just say that one girl has sex with two men in the same day, and there is a mixture of semen. It would be a 3-person mixture. You have her DNA and you have these two unidentified males. Yes, our lab, once the DNA is sent, will extract each individual profile. And what we will do is we will subtract the victim's profile and we will sequence the other 2 profiles individually. And we don't know who we're going to get. One could be her boyfriend, in which she consented. The other one could be a guy she was cheating with and not the subject, right? But yes, we can subtract out people in mixtures.
You mentioned that the first thing that is
like you
done
can pull apart the DNA. Is that what you mean? So you can have like their own profile.
That's cool. I had no idea you could do that, by the way.
Can you do that with like guns? Like if I was to touch a gun and then he touched a gun and then you touched a gun, so we have 3 people that are touching this gun and then it shoots somebody and kills somebody. How does that work?
Well, it depends. Are we going off fingerprints? Are we going off touch DNA?
Touch DNA.
Touch DNA.
So touch DNA, you have to know that touch DNA is made of the oils and the micro, organisms in your skin. And so again, I'm just going to say it's not as reliable of a source as autosomal DNA, which would be even a fingerprint, in my opinion, is more, I will say this. The first time I heard even of touch DNA, and many in the field that I was with, was at a conference maybe 2 years ago. This is a very, to my knowledge, a very new method. And because it deals with the oils and whatnot, it's not something I've worked with. Gotcha. So this is probably maybe the first case that I've heard it being used. Maybe. I would have to look.
So you said that there's an STR profile that's created. From my understanding, when it gets to like office, there will be like a SNP profile that had to be made up. Is that accurate?
So the SNP profile is what is created with the whole genome sequencing or a microarray. Well, that's what we're doing at that lab. Yes.
Is there anything that you can? Is there anything that you can do at your lab that will affect the STR profile that was created first?
Okay, so again, let's say we get a sample. We've got a tube of DNA, right? The first thing we're going to do is we want to check it against CODIS. We want to do an STR profile because if the guy or girl is already in CODIS, why are we going any further? Okay. So that's the first thing. Then if there is additional DNA, we're going to send that DNA off to the lab. And yes, there is a lot we can do with so in STR profile only takes a few specific markers from one's DNA, as opposed to sequencing your entire genome. That is a huge difference.
No, I understand
And
that. What I'm trying
Can
to
I
get
ask a
to is,
question?
okay, go ahead. I'm
So,
sorry.
I have one question. When you get asked to do your job, they send you not the DNA, they send you the profile, correct?
No.
What do they send you?
We need to
have
have
a show where I give you all a lesson in IgG. Just so you all can
So
understand.
there you go. We just handled it right there. Thank you so much. You guys, you're good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time.
They do not send me a profile. What they will send me is basically the story. I have a murder, and I have blood, and I have whatever it is. Okay, I have saliva. And what would you like us to send to the third party lab? And I will call the lab, and the lab will say, well, we would like the saliva. So then they will send the saliva to the lab. I never get it. What I get back is after the DNA has been sequenced, just like if you were to do Ancestry, right? I get a data file. I upload that data file, and then I get to see all of the matches, right? And if you had time, I literally would log in right now to GEDmatch and show you what it looks like when I get that profile back. It's just a list of matches.
Like a list of names?
A list of names, how much they match my unknown DNA contributor, and some other just basic information. Then I have to go and identify who they are, make sure they are the person that took the test, and then build out their family trees back in time, all without them knowing.
Right. So my question or my angle wasn't necessarily the science or anything behind it, like to that extent. It's that an STR profile is created first, and then you have the genetic stuff and the SNP profile. My question is, if something was done in your lab incorrectly, whether it was mishandling, contaminating, or perhaps
There's nothing
chain of
contaminated
custody,
because she doesn't have
or right,
DNA.
anything. There's nothing there.
That's
You
not
have the DNA? I thought you don't
No.
have the DNA.
No, I do not have the DNA, but that does not mean that it doesn't come to the lab with contamination. You have to think.
I'm
With
talking
DNA
about
that's
when
been
you did it though. I'm talking about so like
Well, my thing is basically what I'm trying to say is if something was done inappropriately or wrong, or they used the wrong
you mean like from the
Ancestry
beginning,
or
Daniel?
23.
Like, when are you
No,
talking
I'm
about?
talking about after the STR profile. If something goes wrong and there's a mishandling, whatever the case may be, how would that get the STR profile thrown out?
well,
Yes,
the,
It shouldn't,
the,
right?
the STR profile is not it's not created with the genealogist. It's created with the state crime lab or the local crime lab. So if
he's talking about before you ever get it, Gabriella. He's
Right.
talking about
What I'm saying is there's an STR profile that
okay, let's do
was
like this. Like, let's do
DNA
like this.
checked.
We're
Hold
at
on,
the
hold on.
crime
Let me
scene,
finish
Daniel.
this. No, let
the
me finish my
STR
thought.
profile has nothing to do with what I do. Nothing
Exactly.
to do.
So my question is that's exactly what I wanted to know. So because there's a big question right now that if something was done in the creation of the SNP profile, that would somehow get the STR profile thrown out, or the fact that a suspect was connected via a DNA match between touch DNA and an STR profile that was created, and a suspect's buccal swab connecting to it. The theory is that there's something that the IgG and or the SNP profile or anything that somebody can do something there to get the STR profile thrown out. So Exactly. So
You're not going to have anything to compare it to.
So let me just clarify. So when
I'm
an STR
referencing just to so everybody knows, I'm referencing the fruit of the poison tree is what I'm trying to get to.
I totally get what you're getting at. And I will tell you this, when the STR profile is created, it is created on its own prior to IgG involvement. It can be sent, the DNA that's sent to the third party lab for IgG can be sent from the same DNA in the same tube, but the STR profile is already created. It has nothing to do with what I do. The only thing that it has to do with what I do or will compromise my work at all is that when I am done identifying this individual and I call the detective and I say, here is your suspect, they will then go collect trash or whatever they're going to do to compare it to their STR profile to make sure that I am correct. Other than that, the STR profile could have been created with blood and they could have decided
so they
to
don't
send
compare it to your
me
they don't compare it to
saliva.
what you have.
No, they compare the name of the let's talk the Michigan case, right? So I provided to the Michigan detective John Moore, I said Patrick Gillum, I said there's 3 brothers. I cannot tell you which one because the DNA all leads to the same set of siblings. I can only exclude sisters, right? Because it was semen. However, based on further investigative research that I have done, I would first focus on Patrick Gillum. Now, what they're going to do and what they did is they went and sat on him and got a cigarette. They then run an STR profile on that cigarette and compare it to the STR profile that was originally created in the case. That has nothing to do with any DNA that was used for me to make my conclusion as to who the suspect was.
Right. So basically,
So do you see
there's
what we're
no
saying there,
connection
Danielle?
there.
They didn't go and get the trash.
There's no connection because they could be using the same tube, but here's the thing. If you are thinking that an STR profile is created and the data is used in the IgG, the answer is no.
Right.
The
No, I'm not saying
STR
that.
profile does not provide enough
let me ask you a
information
question.
for us to do anything.
Miss Vargas, can I ask you a question? Did you go out and did they go out and get a cigarette butt from the dad of Patrick, whoever? Did they go and get a cigarette butt from him?
No, I didn't identify his dad as the suspect.
Okay, so they didn't go and get his. They didn't. When you gave him the tip in Michigan, you said, "Hey, it's these 3 brothers. This is what's coming back. This is my money. This is what I did this. This is what's coming back to. It's one of these 3 brothers." Okay, great.
They went and first of all confirmed one thing because there was 3 brothers and I cannot tell them which one because I don't know. The DNA leads to the same place. They first double checked my investigative work, not my tree, but the criminal records of these 3 brothers. They found that I was probably right, that they should focus on Patrick, and they immediately went and sat on him.
They didn't go to his dad's house and sit on his dad.
No, that's not going to match the STR profile. There's only 11 states in the United States that have familial matching. Whereas if you and I are siblings, right, or whatever, and you are a known criminal and I've just created my first crime and I've never been in CODIS, but they run my DNA through CODIS, you will come up as a hit that you are like a first degree relative to me. And then they're going to come to you and say, who is it? Who's the person? We know they're immediately related to you. But that's only 11 states in the United States that have.
I got a question. So if somebody goes and, like, for instance, yourself, you go into a situation where you have family members and you can't tell the difference. Does that mean that the STR can't? Because I'm under the impression that the STR can tell the difference between, can match somebody between, even if they're siblings. Isn't that correct?
No.
So if you're,
Okay,
if you,
so
if DNA, if you have DNA
let
off of
me.
something and
I
you're
have.
testing it to a buccal swab to another person, you're telling me that they wouldn't be able to tell the difference if it was
No,
a sibling or not?
we're talking about.
I want to show you. I want to show you something really quick. I don't know if you'll be able to see this.
Okay,
But
I
I
can make
want-
it bigger. Hold on.
It's okay. I just want you to look more precisely at these numbers. Okay, you see here we've got in this, oh Jesus, how do I do it? In this column, we've got 1111, we've got 1414. This is a victim, this is a suspect. Over here, we've got -11, that's a partial. If we look here, we've got 1413, 1313, 1413. This DNA is likely belongs to the victim, not to the
Right,
subject. It does
but
not
when you're-
match. One allele is
Mhm.
from one parent and one allele is from another parent. Okay?
Right.
So not all siblings share the same. They don't share identical DNA. Right? When I say I cannot get any further, it's because the work that we do only leads us to the set of parents. Okay.
Right. I'm not referring to the work that you guys are doing. I'm referring to the STR profile. Like if, for instance, I have, if I were to go and drink from a bottle of water, I have two siblings. If they go get my DNA from the rim of this bottle of water and they take the DNA from me and my two brothers, would they be able to tell which one of us took one that actually took the drink? Because from my understanding, although we're brothers, we don't exactly have 50% of
your
our
DNA
DNA
is
from our
different. That's not
mom.
what you're
Our
talking about.
difference, yeah, right. So what I'm saying is,
The answer is no.
okay, the answer is no. They wouldn't be able to tell which one of us took the drink.
No.
Interesting.
Unless
So if you're just compare, I mean, if they have an STR profile like this that they're comparing it to, okay, this is the evidence right here. They're
You have to have
comparing-
something to compare it to, right?
Yes, yes. They
So
have
we
to
had-
compare it. So if they
So,
test
like-
all,
So when you would have gotten, let's say, if somebody goes out and gets my dad's DNA, but you don't have my dad's DNA to compare it to, so you're looking at this and being like, what the fuck?
well,
and that's why I will tell you this. Never, if the subject that I provide, the name that I provide, turns out to not match, never have I heard of them testing their parents or their aunts or their uncles or their nieces and their nephews. They come back to me just like they did in the Roxanne Wood case and they say, Gabriela Vargas, you were wrong. You screwed up. He's not the guy. It doesn't match. And I review my work and I know that I was right. And I say, no, you were wrong. I don't know how, but do it again. They don't say, okay, well, let's go and pull mom's garbage now and see if it matches mom. It doesn't work that way. It
Right.
doesn't
And I don't
work
think they
that
did
way.
that. I don't think they did that in the scenario that we're talking about. I think that the issue is that by the time they found out a specific suspect was a suspect, he was no longer in his residence. So, you know, if he's at a family member, so if you're investigating Blue, right, and you're trying to pull his DNA and you go to Blue's house and he's not there, and there's no
Why
way
does
of
he have to
opening
be-
the door.
why does he have to be there?
No, he doesn't. But I mean, what are you going to test if you can't
If
make
you
entry?
come to my house and I'm not here, what are you going to do? You're going to sit on my porch and wait for me? No, you're going to go to my trash.
Right. If the trash hasn't been there for a week, you know, the trash has been thrown out. This person's been gone for a while and there's absolutely nothing to pull from. And you know that this person is living in a different house. Let's just say they're with their cousins. Wouldn't you pull the trash from there in hopes to try to find and match one of theirs? I mean, the thing is,
But that's the thing is that
you
they
know,
didn't.
I understand.
It wasn't there.
I understand.
That's
Hold
my
on.
question.
I understand, wanting to pull the trash of somebody who is responsible or somebody that you expect. I completely get it. That's the best idea. But there's some context that goes into every scenario. And one
Dana,
is
that's not what
if
happened.
the person, but that is what happened.
There
The
was nothing
person
there
that
to
we are
compare it to,
talking
so how did they
about.
compare it?
What do you
Okay, if
mean?
we
There
are
was the
getting,
DNA on the
if we are
sheath.
getting,
Yeah. Oh,
hang
we're not
on,
going to
if
get
we're
specific.
getting
Yeah, we're
specific,
not going to get.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not. I don't want to get
have to bow
specific.
out of this.
Right. I don't want to get specific. But
I can just tell you that here, let me give you another example. I had a murder that has not been announced yet, but I can give you a little bit of detail. We have to confirm that he is actually the suspect, right? Well,
Right.
so he died. So the first thing they would do, and they were going to do, is exhume his body. Okay.
Mhm.
They don't even want to test children or parents. They're going to exhume him. Well, he was cremated. So now what do you do? Now we look for living children, which we can't find any. So we're doing all that we can to try to find where can we get DNA to confirm that my lead was correct and will match the original STR profile that was put in CODIS upon this crime. They don't go and say, hey, neighbor Betty, do you happen to have a fork that he used before, the last time he ate here? I mean, I've
Right.
never heard of that.
No, I understand that. I would think, if I was investigating somebody for anything, whether it's drugs or kidnapping, whatever the case may be, and I find out that the person was no longer at the last residence that I knew them to be and was at a different residence, that I would go and watch that said different residence to try to locate that person and or the victim, whoever it may be. I just think that would be the most logical thing to do. And
Absolutely.
That is
perfect.
what happens. And I will tell you, in the Michigan case, they sat on his house for a week, and this guy never left the house until literally the 7th day. And they followed him in the vehicle and saw he lit up a cigarette, and they're like, bingo, right?
Right.
So it's not always as easy as you think it is.
Right.
In other cases I've had where the family gets done eating, the detective's been in there watching them, knows which cup is the one he needs to test, and will literally go and fight the manager to get custody of it.
My thing is that if you went out and got, somebody else's, because you were testing stuff and it was somebody else's DNA, like, or it was multiple people in their DNA, you don't have anything to compare it to. So it would never come back as a match on any, if you have, say that I live with my 5 college roommates. Okay. So you come and you get my trash, and I happen to be on a golf tournament, so I wasn't even there that week. So you have my trash with all 5 of my college roommates minus me. Okay. So you're running these DNA tests against every piece that you could have, and get your hands on. At the end of the day, if you don't have anything to compare it to, which you're trying to compare it to mine, it would keep coming back as not a match, not a match, not a match, not a match. So Daniel, what I'm trying to say is if they went and sat and you would go to another place that somebody lived at, okay, they did that. They took out the trash, they went ahead and compared it, and it came back as not a match. It would have to come back as not a match, because unless you have those STR profiles of those other, like, of all my roommates, you're not going to come back as any matches.
But
Right.
that's
So,
that's not always the case, though.
Okay,
That's
so
not always the case, depending on what state. I've got a case in Illinois.
okay,
There's
Illinois.
a baby that was found in a suitcase. Okay.
Oh, boy.
They believe that it came from somebody in that house. And they have been pulling trash without doing IgG, pulling trash regularly and sending it to Quantico for testing. Okay.
To compare it to something.
To compare it to the baby, the remains of this baby
Yeah.
that was left. Okay. That's the comparison.
Yeah.
Who is the parent?
So my DNA is the comparison of my roommates, and you would keep pulling this, and it's coming back as nothing.
And they got a hit. That
The person is not the parent, but it is a close relative. So again, it depends on
Okay.
what state we're talking about here.
Okay, thank you.
So I got a question. If somebody were to pull my grandparents' trash, would they be able to tell that that person was relating using the STR profile if they had my profile?
It's usually a first degree relative. So yeah, so
Parent, grandparent, child. Yeah.
Okay, so that would come back. Okay, cool. And kind of back to what I was saying, and I don't know if you can. Hold on, give me a sec. Can you share my screen, Lena?
Oh, yeah. Well, what does this have to do with?
This is with the this is with a branch. I know that this, you know what? Let me not use this. I'm gonna give you. Let me draw this out. This is actually the branch that they use.
I can show you guys. I mean, to ease
Well,
up.
Well, we're gonna move on from like you were a surprise, so it was. I just wanted to be like, just like, hey, I know everybody has all these questions about DNA because it's like that, oh my god, what is this whole like spitting in a tube, I swallow type of thing? So I don't.
if you don't,
I just wanted to briefly get into it. I didn't want to go all ham on anybody.
Right.
Well,
I do have one
last
last
like other questions about my case. So thank you.
Feel free to give Daniel my information, and you are welcome to contact me, and we can discuss this all day long. I also think that we should have, that what we were talking about last time is one lucky person I get to identify. But also maybe just the basics of like, how does this work and what does it look like and what's the end result? So you let me know if you want me back,
I would love to have you on my channel as well. But I do have one last question. You mentioned that you've gone to court on other cases. When there's STR profile match, is it typical that you go to court on your job and findings as well, or is the STR profile usually enough to convict somebody when there's an STR match?
So it depends. So the STR profile, if it's an initial match in CODIS, that is enough for them to get an arrest warrant, and that's it. I have not been to court before. This case is the only case that I've been to court on, and it's not my personal case. I did not work this case. When a case that I've worked, the STR profile is comparing to the name that I provided. And yes, I am, there is a possibility that I can be called to court to have a deposition, to testify, whatever. But it's not likely. There are not many defense attorneys that are challenging IGG.
Gotcha.
And one of the main reasons is that DNA doesn't lie. So
you have a hard time, proving that we are wrong when we provide the answer and they pull your DNA and confirm that we are actually right.
Yeah. Well, you have been really, really helpful. I mean, I don't know much about DNA. I used to be in law enforcement myself, but I didn't deal with forensics or DNA or any of those things. So completely ignorant when it comes to certain things like that. I appreciate your knowledge. It's very informative.
Thank you. And
it's a complicated thing. It's not very easy, and every case has its own scenarios that are not like the last case. And so you just have to be very open-minded, and especially with how long this has been out there and how long Touch DNA has been out there and the reliability, and then make your own conclusions on things.
True story.
Well, thank you so much.
All right.
Well, I'll keep watching the rest of your show, but thank you for having me again.
Oh,
and it was nice meeting you, Daniel.
Thank you for doing this.
Oh, it was amazing.
I appreciate you.
All right.
You guys take care.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
See, there you go. Look at that.
That was awesome, man.
That's what I was trying to say. I was like, hey, just hang on to those DNA questions just for like a couple more minutes, man. I got you on that DNA.
No, yeah, that was awesome. I'm glad I had a lot of questions about that, because I don't know about the DNA.
I think DNA, it's science. Like, think about when you make a science project when you're younger, you're like, fuck, my volcano is blowing up and someone else is like perfect. So I don't know. I just think that there's a lot. I mean, it's science at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, And she answered a lot of the questions that I had, and it's still there's still some that I want to know.
Mhm.
The biggest question that I have is there anything that somebody can do wrong while creating an S&P profile, whether it's use the database wrong or input information incorrectly, that will get the STR profile thrown out of the case? Because I
Mhm.
don't see it. And if it's not, I just feel like this whole debate on did the S&P profile, was it done right? Was it done wrong? It's minute. It doesn't make a difference because at the end of the day, the STR profile matched. And so, but there's so much
Yeah,
more
the
to it.
planted sheath. The
Yeah.
planted sheath matched the planted sheath matched the DNA of Bryan Kohberger. We're not going to disagree there. I'm going to give you that.
So why do you think
It
it's
just matters if it
planted?
was planted or not.
What makes you think it's planted? We'll go to
Okay,
that.
this is 1 minute, 1 minute. Ready? And I only need 2 seconds. The sheath wasn't seen on any body cams, and Payne saying that he could see it from the door. Payne saying that he saw it later, but then Blaker saying that he had to hear about it from, an ISP guy. I know that Payne and Blaker have been working together for at least 2 years. If they didn't know each other before then, at the end of the day, you talk to your comrades all the time. And for Blaker to have heard from ISP that there was a sheath there versus Payne and him getting there at the same time. Yeah, go fly a kite, kick rocks. I'm not buying it. It's not on any body cams.
Did they arrive at the same time? They went through the scene at the same time?
Yeah. Those two. Yeah, Officer Smith walked them through.
At the
I
same
think
time.
it was at 4.
I know that Payne went there at 4 because he was talking to one of the
But that's what Blaker put in his. I mean, unless he was just color copy paste with what Blaker or what Payne had said, but in his, he used the same thing.
Right, because I do find the possibility that the lead in would
Oh,
go
the
in
last
there.
thing I didn't say is that there's only one. Like, there's no blood on this. It's just one. It's just touch DNA on the snap, and there's no blood, and it was under the body of one of a stabbed victim. And then the comforter, if it was like a struggle, again, no blood got on it. It's just sitting there, a tan leather sheet, brand new, except for touch DNA. So,
Well, to go through that step by step, the first one is it possible that after the initial investigating officer saw the piece of evidence, that forensic collected it so that it wouldn't be further contaminated if already done so, or wouldn't be contaminated, period? I think that's a pretty good possibility. And we also got to remember the location of the sheath. The location of the sheath was face down, right? So is it possible that there is blood on the sheath? I think there's more than a possibility.
if there was blood on it, there would be more than one. There's only one unknown.
Where's the spec at? The spec is inside the button while the sheath is face downward. So if you poured blood on top of it, it's probably one of the few places that would be protected by not contaminated by the blood. And there's
I
a
just mean
good
it in general,
possibility.
Daniel. It was
Right. Well,
run through.
there's a good possibility that sheath was full of blood. I mean, full of DNA. It could have had Bryan Kohberger's DNA at the back of it, but once the blood flowed on top of the back, then I mean, I don't know how much of that would have been corroded, corrupted, mixed in, that couldn't be changed or whatnot. But what we do know is that it was face down and that it was inside the button, which would be the most.
That? We don't know that.
Well, according to the probable cause, we'd have to think that. I mean, in order for it not to be known that way, we would have to
Come
believe
on,
that
brother.
there was a multi-agency plot to frame Bryan Kohberger, a PhD
I didn't say there was a multi-agency anything. I just don't think the Moscow Police Department has any motherfucking say on anything. And they're going to be, it's like, you better do what we told you. We're going to play that song for them. It's at the end of the day, they kept it in Moscow's jurisdiction.
I understand that they kept it in Moscow's jurisdiction, but you had to send the DNA to the Idaho State Lab. That's a different agency and completely different thing on its own. It has no ties to the Moscow Police Department. Yes, they do lab work for them, but they don't work for Moscow Police Department. You also have the Idaho State Police Department. You have the FBI. So we would have to believe that all these guys would just have to turn away certain evidence or certain things that look a little bit shady. in efforts to go after Bryan Kohberger, a PhD student in criminology. It doesn't
Okay,
pass the
you know,
sniff test.
okay, let me ask you something here. Take a look. Let me ask you something. Read that right there for me.
Which one? Miss Drake hung up to call 911 after a short period of time. What's this referencing? I don't know.
Well, this is a probable cause. The same thing that they did for Bryan Kohberger. The same people wrote this up for this guy, the Drake family. So I just want to show you what they put around a 911 call. So this was their synopsis
This is
of what
Sergeant
happened.
Paynes.
This is Tolson and Van Leuven of ISP who were involved with Payne at the.
So before we go into what
I just want you to
what's
see
their
that
involvement? Right. But what's Tolson's involvement in this case?
Ann Taylor wants his records, all of his records.
I understand what she wants, but he
He
wasn't
was involved in
the one
investigating the case. They were involved in doing. This
did
was
he collect the sheath? I don't think so. I don't think he was there that time. Did he?
You have no
did
idea
he
what
ask
he
for
was
the
there
warrant? Did he ask for the warrant? Well,
Payne says
I'm pretty
it right
sure
here,
there's a
Daniel.
chain of evidence. I'm pretty sure there's a chain of evidence that indicates where it came from. But if we're to believe that Tolson had something to do with it, did he apply for the warrants against Kohberger? Did he pick up the trash at Kohberger's dad's house that ended up testing as the father of Bryan Kohberger?
We're talking about when somebody sees something written up by other officers and they say these words, okay, that based on numerous interviews and conducted by MPD officers, ISP detectives, FBI agents, as well as my review of the evidence, I have learned the following. So this is people, when you have a collective groupthink effort on your probable cause, yeah, one motherfucker has to sign it. That's just how the world works. But at the end of the day, they're putting it in black and white here and saying that MPD, ISP, FBI, all involved with me and where I got my knowledge from. I reviewed it, I wrote it, but I'm getting my information from these people, okay? And all I'm saying is that this is the work that they did on a case up in Bonners Ferry, and they said that this 911 call happened, and it never did. And it's the same people that are involved in the Bryan Kohberger case.
Well, I mean, it's similar
That's my
people.
take.
There's a distant connection there, right? But that doesn't necessarily, I mean, you can trace that back to anybody. I mean, if these people ever had lunch at a convention for police officers who eventually had a detective that talked to somebody else who had a crime and something went bad. So because the connection goes back over here, there has to be more to it. Now, I would take this information and say, hey, you know what? I think you got something.
Ann Taylor wanted these people's.
Right. I get it. She's going to want a lot of stuff.
There was 120 people on this case. She mentioned 3 people. 3 people, Daniel, out of 120 people that investigated this case. 3 people.
Yeah,
and one of them was the man that was involved in this.
Right. Obviously, if there's some people that have some issues, you're going to go ahead and highlight those officers. But it doesn't mean that the rest of the case is
that would interest me. That would interest me.
I'm not saying that it's not interesting, but then again, you have to ask yourself, what part of the investigation did they play a role in? And why would they have wanted to frame somebody like Bryan Kohberger, at the point of the investigation that they came into? What would be the motive behind framing him?
I think that you think that people know that that's going to happen.
You think what's going to happen?
I'm saying you think that if I'm an officer, I'm just doing my job. I do my job. I don't think that people are framing anybody. But if my report gets buried, my report gets buried. I don't think that, it's not that I'm in on some investigation that's I'm in some conspiracy.
I've been in law enforcement I was in law enforcement for a while, and I can say that there is question and doubt amongst officers, and that just because one officer thinks one thing or whatever the case may be doesn't mean that the others automatically go along with it. In fact, there's cliques, there's this, there's that amongst officers. Not everybody's got everybody's back, so to speak. And in fact, some folks, in order to promote up after the backs of other officers. But what I'm trying to say was, and I did say that if there would be a problem. But the problem is also that there is other cases that have occurred. One in particular where a man hit his dad with an axe, killing him, and then hit his mom with an axe and drove 3 hours back, and there was no DNA or cleanup in the car, and that guy was convicted. So just because there's no DNA in the car, we have to figure out and ask ourselves, who is this person? You know, is this person a drug addict? Is this person a college frat student that's drunk? Is this person upset because his ex-girlfriend is moving to Texas? Well, all of those things don't line up to somebody committing a crime without leaving their DNA behind and, you know, having the perfect crime and doing something planned out. Those are typically things that were done, you know, out of, you know, the moment. And those type of crimes aren't clean. Now, if you have a guy who has, you know, experience and or classes in forensics, right? Which he does, which the first thing that they teach you is how not to contaminate. What does that mean? How not to leave your DNA behind and how not to take the scene with you home, which means how not to trace DNA back to your house or blood or whatever, because there is a safety issue with that. If the suspect that you're, you know, or if there's a crime scene and there's this amount of blood and you take back that blood with you, you don't know if that person was infected with something or not. So there's a safety issue going into those things. Myself as an officer, when I was an officer, the forensic aspect was like taught to you like right after, you know, the freaking legal terms and shit. So as soon as you go into that, they teach you how to protect and keep a scene protected. So he would have had knowledge of how not to bring a scene with him. You have to ask yourself, where's the means here? You know, the means meaning it's not just like, are they capable of committing this crime? Are they capable of stabbing 4 different people? They have the arm strength, the endurance. It's also the knowledge and the know-how to commit the crime. And how many people that are suspects, you know, going from the DoorDash guy all the way to the ex-boyfriend to Bryan Kohberger to any of those people, do they have more knowledge of forensics and how not to contaminate a scene than Bryan Kohberger and the know-how and to complete it? Probably not. And when you look at what went wrong when it came to Bryan Kohberger's case, it's all the stuff that happened with the act of the crime being committed, you know, not having to do with the planning, because there's a significant difference. You know, if you're planning out a crime and you're, you know, doing the things like, I don't know, putting clothes together in a backpack so that way you can later. Those are all things that have a lot less stress than the actual commission of the crime. When you're in the crime, shit hits the fan and a lot of things go unexpected, and training and planning sometimes, and most of the time, especially if it's your first time, go out the door. And that goes for any situation. Now, I was trained in combat and I trained in a lot of different things, but you know, the first time I got out of my unit and got into a fist fight with somebody, I went back to my hood fight. So it happens, you know, you don't go back into going into, you know, this stuff that you train. Now, after you get experience and you can control your emotions and your adrenaline throughout those moments, then that's when you can kind of revert back to your training. But if this was a first time offense for Bryan Kohberger, the first time he committed this, I don't understand why people are so shocked that he would have made mistakes during the commission of the crime. He's smart, not a robot. Even BTK left the gun behind at the scene of his crime. So, you know, going based on that, just because there's no DNA in the car doesn't necessarily mean that it's not him. You know, there's other context that goes along with it.
That's my question is why didn't they had an opportunity to get into that car November 29th in some capacity, or at least attempt to, they didn't.
Because they didn't see him as a suspect. I mean, why do you think that everything happens after December 20th?
I know that I talked to Scott Roeder, and I'm going to go with Scott Roeder there, and it says that Lana, you may be able to visibly not see blood, but there's no way that that's passing any tests. It is very, very, very difficult to not only get rid of the blood, but then to get rid of a cleanup of all this blood.
Chris Porco, the way he got, you know, was able to axe his parents in the head and drive 3 hours back without getting DNA on him is because he worked at a veterinarian clinic and he was around surgical equipment and had information, access, and training on animal surgeries. And, you know, regardless if it's forensic.
Wait, so Bryan
surgery,
had that?
No, I'm talking about Chris Porco. This is a guy who put an axe in his dad's head, put an axe in his mom's head while hovering over him, left back 3 hours to his dorm in Rochester, New York, and didn't have DNA in his car at all. No,
what do you think about the sheath? They were looking for the knife. They were looking for the sheath. They said that they went to Amazon. Today we just found out that the sheath, or Amazon clicks. They wanted everything to do with Amazon. What did you see that today?
I saw it. I mean, they don't have the knife, so even if he searched for an Amazon, that doesn't mean he bought a thing, or even if he bought it, that's the murder weapon. Like
I thought that everybody was talking about that they had that the receipt. Everyone was like, "Yeah, we found the receipt for the knife."
I mean, they
kind
could
of
have. They may have.
in that.
I mean, even if they didn't, that changed the fact that, you know, you have a guy who, well, you know, regardless of anything, let's just take the SNP profile, the genetic tree out of it. A guy whose DNA did match to the DNA on the DNA of the sheath. A guy who drives a white vehicle without a front license plate. That during the commission of the crime, his phone was just so off. It turned on after the crime is committed. And his alibi is that he was driving around by himself. In order for somebody to frame him, they would have had to have known those things. They would have had to have known, hey, you know, night at 2:50 in the morning, Bryan Kohberger is going to leave his house. And after he leaves his house, he's going to turn his phone off for approximately an hour and a half. That is our window to go in there and commit this quadruple homicide and plant this DNA on his sheath that belongs to him, so that we can perfectly frame this guy. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, if it was a movie script, I would have laughed at it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you have to put everything into context. It's not just the fact that, oh, hey, you know, it's just touch DNA. Okay, I get that. Oh, okay, there's 20,000 white Elantras in the area. I understand that as well. How many of them don't have a front license plate? That's 10% of them. Well, that's probably like 200, you know, white Elantras without a front license plate. How many of those people that operate that vehicle were out in Pullman and around the Moscow area between the hours of 4 and 4:30 in the morning? You know, it's just at a certain point, just too many coincidences. Now, do they have enough to prove he's guilty? I don't know. I mean, I question a lot of things myself. I think the defense has a lot of hurdles, but that doesn't change the fact that I think he did it. You know, I think OJ did it and they didn't find him guilty.
I think OJ's son did it, and then and then he went there.
My wife says the same thing.
Jason did it with his knife from the restaurant. The motherfucker was crazy. He still is crazy.
Right. Yeah. No, my wife says the same thing. She says, I think it's OJ's son.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well,
nuts.
I mean, there's a possibility. I'll put it this way. Like, I'm not just pro law enforcement all the way. In fact, in this case, I thought that there was a good opportunity where not so much framing Kohberger, but they had the wrong guy, you know, just because he drove a car and maybe had some problems. But as information started to get cleared up and as I understood the evidence that was out there, because the probable cause affidavit was written very poorly. It is written to shit when it comes to this case. And it took a lot even for me to go through it, dissect it, and understand what the hell they're saying. And it's stupid. I get it, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong.
Mm-hmm. I think I struggle with a lot internal issues with the IDAHO4 case. I think that if Bryan Kohberger is the one that did it, they let possibly greed fuck this case up to the point that we need to not lose any, you know, people coming back to the school, people being involved with our frats or sororities. So in my opinion, this case, if it does fall through the cracks, I think it has a lot to do with the university and the business dealings, because they put that before, you know, but they were telling the public. I just think when you want to pick up somebody like Bryan Kohberger, but you're telling the public that, hey guys, you guys are all safe, and it's, you know, this is a targeted attack, isolated targeted attack, and then you pick up somebody like that who is, they saying, becoming a serial killer. I think that, I don't know what's worse, that your law enforcement, you know, people are lying to you.
Well, when the incident came out, Lena, and they said that this murder happened, did you think that this was a serial killer, or did you think this was something else?
I think it has a lot to do with skulls.
Skulls?
Yeah. I think that these sororities and fraternities on that campus are the most entitled motherfuckers you will ever meet, hands down. I think their parents get them out of everything they could ever get themselves into. And I think that the fraternities and sororities on that campus rule the fucking roost. And I think that there was a ton of shit going on before this happened, and there will be a ton of shit after this happens.
No, and I don't agree. I don't disagree with
So,
you.
I mean, would I send my kid to fucking Idaho? Absolutely not. There, my kid won't
No,
go to near that.
there's a lot of death that happens in that area, whether it's overdose or these murders or suicides. That seems to be very prevalent, or Idaho hazing. Yeah, I get it 100%. But I mean, I don't look at things, although I've been accused of being, I just favor law enforcement. No, I look at the evidence, and if the evidence points one way or another, like for instance, the Richard Allen case, I thought that was a fucking slam dunk case. The guy put himself there, and now all this shit comes out, and I'm like, well, I still think he's involved, but I think that there's way more to the story. I
don't
think
think
that
he's involved at all.
I mean, he puts himself there at 1:30.
He went to somebody immediately. That sounds like, he saw it on the news and maybe he could help. Can you imagine ever doing that? And then your life just up fucking 5 years later, 6 years later, somebody coming at you the way that they did. Come on.
I mean, maybe. I mean, here's the thing. If we believe that it's Elvis Fields and his crew and Patrick or Pat or whatever, I'm not very familiar with the case, but if we were to believe that it's those guys, and, based on Richard Allen's defense, they go after people who are, low IQ, right? People that have problems. I think that's what they said. People that aren't very intelligent. Those were the people that Dave Holder and his buddy were supposedly recruiting for their crew, right? And somebody, if they committed this crime and they went to the police and told them that they were there, wouldn't that fit the description of somebody that they may have been recruiting? Because that doesn't sound like something very smart to do. Now, the one piece of evidence that tells me that more than likely he committed this crime is the fact that he stated that he saw 3 juveniles as he entered the trail. And there are 3 juveniles that claim they had seen him, or not him, but somebody that described as him. And they have a photo timestamp of when they were at the bench on that trail at 1:26 p.m. So, and that was before they ran into the person coming into the park.
That was said 2 years later in a 2020 year interview about the dates of those photos, to say that you saw. Did you see him before or after? That interview happened in 2020. So that was 3 years. I'm sorry, 3 years after the date of the murder. So you were asking me a question. Did I see him before I took the photos or after? Shit, I don't know. Okay, we'll go ahead and go with that.
I think
so that wasn't like that was not in the biggest
clue
that day or
right,
3 or 4.
But you have 2 different stories from 2 different parties. I mean, 2 stories the same from 2 different parties, and you also have the fact.
No, but there's a huge big difference of the time, because he did say he was there from 12 to 1:30, so he was leaving.
When did they say they ran into this guy as they were leaving the trail? So obviously,
no, they said that they didn't ask that. That's not what they asked them. They said, when you took this picture at 1:26 and at 12:43, there was one at 12:43. Did you see him before or after? That's what they asked them.
So here's the thing. You have this 1:26 p.m. photo. And if these girls they know that they took that photo before they left the park, and they left the
park.
How
the fuck are you going to know that 3 years later, Daniel? Who gives a fuck?
They have a photo. They have a photo.
Yeah, and you're asking somebody about a photo 3 years later.
Right, but it
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the timestamp, because he was there then. It's a matter of, did you see it? Did you leave, or did you continue to be there? It matters. Did you see him before you took the photo or after you took the photo?
There's more than just them 2. You also have one of the other victims, or the other witnesses that saw the juveniles walking on.
I'm not going to argue Delphi with you. I'm pretty wrapped up in that case as well. I'm telling you right now, that's an interview that happened 3 years fucking later. The murders were 2017. Right. That interview was 2020.
So
I'm sorry,
so that automatically means that what they're saying is wrong because it's 3 years later. There's no way they can be accurate.
No, I'm taking a totality of everything that I've read, and there's 136 pages. That's some disgusting stuff.
Well, that's from the defense. Now, what we know is that
that's changing Betsy Blair completely. What she said, and Sarah.
Right. I'm not referring to what they said. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about specifically the fact that whether he was on the trail after 1:30 or not. We have a photo that is time stamped from 3 juvenile girls that indicate that that picture was taken before they left the trail, and that they saw an older man or whatever as they left the trail. You have Richard Allen saying he saw 3 juveniles as he entered the trail, not as he exited, not as he was walking in the middle, as he entered the trail. And that was the day after, when
So you
he
think
went
a
and
guy,
spoke.
that was there to do a murder that was Odinism cultish went and told the police that he was there?
Yeah,
Let me just
people
make
do
sure that
that.
I get
Some
that
people,
straight.
well, you have this. You have the fact that he probably was on his phone, and you also have the fact that he saw 3 juveniles that he doesn't know when they're coming forward.
Your clerk
So
at
if he
CVS.
goes and lies and says that he wasn't there, and somebody says he was, and they check his phone and he was there, then he's automatically, guilty. But the fact that maybe 3 juveniles saw him as he was entering might be the only reason why he chose to go in there and identify himself as being there. But again, you have the juveniles walking out. They have a time-stamped photo, and then you have other people who saw the juveniles walking across Freedom Bridge leaving at the same time. And there's video documentation of those individuals traveling on 300 North to indicate what time that they were traveling through that area. So you have the phone, you have the camera from one of the persons that that recorded a person driving by that ended up stating that they saw juveniles walking on the bridge. And then you have Richard also saying that they crossed paths. So I think that the evidence is overwhelming that he was there at that time. Now, whether he acted alone, whether he was a part of this Odinism, whether his part was just solely to get the girls from off the bridge down to past the river, that's possible. I don't know. But the thing is, I do believe without a shadow of a doubt that guy was there at 1:30 by what he stated, what the juvenile stated, based on their timestamp photo, based on a recording of a vehicle traveling down 300 North that saw the juveniles, and there's a timestamp on that as well. So there's
So then guess what I think?
Pieces.
Guess what I think? I think everything you just said right there, then these fucking cops suck dick because they had it all day one, week one. What the fuck were they doing?
Right. Man, I dropped my damn microphone. That's a mic drop. That was an official mic drop.
We're at the 2-hour mark. So at least we could probably agree on this, that 6 years later, if it was just so cut and dry, like you're saying, how does this happen? That's just why I don't believe that it is.
I'm not saying that there aren't shitty cops. There are people that can investigate things. There are people that shouldn't be investigating things. It happens just like in any other profession. Are there bad doctors? Are there bad veterinarians? Are there bad animal, control service persons? Yeah. Are there bad taxis, Uber drivers, Craigslist sellers?
Yeah, there's bad people everywhere.
So why are we surprised if a small community is bad at investigating police? I mean, they're the place that would probably have the least experience and things of that nature. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily wrong on this piece of information. Like I said, I think that there's a good
definitely it's a small place. I think Richard Allen was just hanging out there, working at CVS, all the time. I thought this from day one. If this bridge guy person was somebody that was local and that lived there, how is nobody being like, oh, that guy looks like the bridge guy? You know what I mean? Nobody's coming forward. No one's saying anything. But then you look at somebody like that Brad Holder, and he looks like Richard Allen's twin. But he lives in Logansport, which makes sense then because people aren't seeing him every day in Delphi.
The only thing about Brad Holder is the fact that he was
not saying Brad Holder did it. I just think he was there.
Right. Well, the thing that tells me that why they cleared him and why he's so cocky into thinking that they're not going to find him is because, one, he's at work. They probably got some sort of video of him leaving or coming from work. And then afterwards, he went to a gym. Now, this is 2017. I'm assuming most gyms have some sort of card you have fitness. Yeah. That you're going to have to. There's probably some proof that he was there, which is why he was cleared. I mean,
but then he went there twice. That was the other thing, is that he went to the gym allegedly twice.
Right. No, I saw that. I mean, Facebook announced that he was there at 2 a.m.
He did I mean, personally, I blame law enforcement on all of that, though. If it was everything that it says it is, and you had all that evidence day, 1 week, 1 week, 2, Well, then everybody should ask themselves what the fuck's going on, because it's all right there. You had all these people on the trail. They came forward right away. You had Richard Allen coming forward right away. But I just think that it was that, like, there's something to that. They put Richard Allen's name down wrong. His name was down as Rick Allen Whitman. They used his whatever his
address.
road of his wherever he lived, and it's just like what.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, that one at this point, I think is probably more. I would believe the conspiracy aspect on that one more than I would on the Bryan Kohberger case. I think in that one,
think there's a conspiracy. I think people get that twisted about a conspiracy. I think it's something where it's like you have to get something wrapped up because this is gonna fucking kill us. It's like the Penn State football thing, the scandal that happened with Jerry Sandusky. Those fuckers at Penn State knew about that shit and they tried to cover it up for so long. People came to them and they tried to bury it. And they knew what was going to happen. If this comes out, it's going to kill us. Same thing with, the University of Idaho. If whatever, this has to be wrapped up quickly because it's going to kill us. And that doesn't mean there's a conspiracy. That can mean that you get tunnel vision. That can mean, you did stuff that you shouldn't have. At the end of the day, if Bryan Kohberger did it, the sad thing is that if he walks because of whatever the fuck they did. But if Bryan Kohberger didn't, and I'm sorry, for me, the biggest hang up is going to be the car. No blood and basically a secondary crime scene. I think a lot of jurors are going to have a hard time with the timing. How does one guy go in there and do that in the amount of time? And then I know that the defense is not like they're coming with all their experts. So you're going to have an ME that's going to show you wounds that are going to be like, that did not come from that type of a knife. We have these other DNAs. There was other people there, so I just think at the end of the day, if you're all about like, if you have kids and you have a family, it's our job. Like we're the people, we employ everybody, get out and vote, pay attention. If you see something, say something. This isn't about getting anybody off. This is about, when something doesn't pass the eye test, the smell test, I was always told if it looks like shit, it smells like shit, it's shit. So it just, I think it doesn't, like, that's just the bottom line. And I think that anybody in their right mind would want the same grace in terms of if you didn't do something, like give me a fair opportunity to show my innocence, or how about this? I shouldn't have to show that I'm innocent. You should have to prove that I'm guilty. But the world is just so fucking backwards. And there's just so much intelligence out there that I think it's being used in a way that, people that maybe aren't guilty are being found guilty. Just like what DNA did for people. DNA exonerated a lot of people because they didn't do the crimes. They were fucking railroaded. So at the end of the day, if there wasn't DNA right now, think about all the people that would still be in prison that didn't do it.
Right. Now, I'm not saying that mistakes don't happen, or people that are wrongfully charged don't get convicted, things of that nature. It obviously happens. I mean, one of the biggest tactics that defense attorneys do is they'll charge high and they'll threaten with a big punishment in efforts to get somebody to say, fuck it, it's not worth the risk. I'll take probation over the possibility of going to jail for a couple of years. And cop to something that they didn't do. I'm not oblivious to that those things happen and mistakes do happen. And I just think that it just kind of depends. I mean, if it's isolated to one department, isolated to one unit, like for instance, if you had a corrupt unit amongst a department, and there's no checks and balances.
If you're the Idaho State Police, at some point you were local law enforcement at some point, and you worked your way to get to the Idaho State Police. If you're in the FBI, you worked your way to get to that point. Everything, it's relative. There are brotherhoods. There are like, hey, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
I mean, there is when it comes to like, I pull over an officer and that person is speeding and he's going like 5, 7, 8, 10 miles over. yeah, there's professional, courtesy in those type of situations. But when it comes to like moving up, like for instance, I knew a Texas state trooper who got off on arresting police officers that were drinking off duty. Like when they were on their own time doing DWI, they shouldn't have done it. Obviously, they knew better. But he catches them. He doesn't give them a ride home. He gives them a ride to his home. He arrests them. He arrested I don't know how many officers in the state of Texas, and he
What a
moved up
weirdo.
because of it. I'll be honest with you. There's more of those than those that go out of their way to help people. Because what ends up happening is, you get an officer plus a corrupt police officer or a corrupt chief of a different department. That's a big hit. That's like a drug hit. You put a bad cop behind bars. A corrupt cop is like a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? So you caught them. It's a big thing. It's not like, oh, hey, let's look out for each other. Now, if it was a small community like Delphi, I can see some shit happening like that because it's 3,000 people that live there.
Moscow is small shit too if you take the university out.
But the university's there, and
it's all kids that are fucking basically like their own, like whatever dude, every college kid's scared as shit. If you're a cop, you could just come around and do whatever, unless you play the mommy daddy card there. If you're playing mommy daddy ball there,
But you don't have just like, for instance, in Moscow, where every cop grew up in Moscow, their father was a cop or their uncle was a cop or their family's the mayor and that and a third. When you have a community of 25,000 plus people, that doesn't happen. And so you have to be in a situation where there's a lot of control and no checks and balances. Like think of the Murdoch case. That was a situation where you had some powerful people in a small area, the big fish in a small pond. It makes it so much easier to do those type of things. But when you have the eyes of Big Brother upon you and you do something wrong, and it's like a plus for Big Brother, that's seen as a positive thing to go bust a corrupt cop or department or whatever the case may be. I mean, even the FBI, like they get hard-ons for bad, police agencies. Like that's that's who you call when you have an issue for corrupt police and things like that. Is let's call the FBI, we'll call the Texas Rangers, we'll call other departments, and they don't just take that shit like lightly. They get hard on. They want to do that. That's what they want to do. So I don't see this aspect of good old boy, unless it's a small ass community. Then yeah, of course you have the good old boy. The sheriff is your uncle and the judge is your aunt and whatever the case may be. I've seen that 1,000 times. That happens there. Yeah, you can see those type of things, but I just don't see it in a place where you have Moscow Police Department, Idaho State Police Department, the FBI, Idaho State Lab, all involved, and then the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
See, like you're thinking that's all involved. That's not what I'm saying.
Well, you're saying that Tolman's involved because he's Idaho State Police and he interviewed a few people.
No, I'm saying that I think he's dirty as fuck.
Do.
It has nothing to do with. I think he's just a dirty ass cop. That's all.
And he could be. He definitely could be.
You see somebody writes up a fucking affidavit and you're like, that's totally, that bitch didn't call fucking 911. She told us she didn't call 911. All right, sounds good to me. Like, what? Y'all
right. No, I get it.
People right. Like, it's just, that's what it is.
And he could be. I mean, the same thing goes like, hey, we're covering, me, yourself, other people are covering this Idaho case. If it comes to find out that somebody completely random that's covering the case is doing something for shady reasons or hiding money. I don't know, doing something fucked up. Does that mean that all of us that are YouTube creators that cover the same story or have talked to the same people are just as corrupt? No, it's that individual person. And you have to identify how much of that individual person had part in the investigation, in my opinion.
Let's talk about teachers. Remember how there would never be a bad word about teachers? There was never storylines about teachers getting drunk at school, doing meth, sleeping with students, all this stuff, right? Then all of a sudden, we all get cell phones, and next thing you know, teachers are fucking their students. It's out there all the time. Teachers are getting people pregnant. Teachers are partying with students. Teachers are, going to work drunk or high or whatever. It's in every. Do
you think that just happened, or do you think maybe it's just being reported now?
I think that I think it would be just as reported with cops as it would be with teachers right now if that could happen.
No, what I'm saying
it's
is,
been going on.
regardless of the legality, is it a situation or a problem that has been ongoing and it just hasn't been in the spotlight, or is that a situation that is new?
No, I think that it's been going on. I think that I'm telling you what I think it is. I think social media, you can bring something to the light. You could, if you see something happen, okay, oh my God, I can record with my phone. Boom, got my clip. And then I can go sell it to TMZ. So it was, you don't have that. You didn't have that back in the day. You didn't have that in the 80s and the 90s.
Right. So because of technology,
because of social media, yeah. Why do you think that we're able to get stuff on camera that police officers do? Anybody does. But I'm telling you, when you want to go up against authority, teachers aren't authority. The teachers union isn't backing the teachers like they used to anyway. So
no, of course
the
not.
cops union is. I mean, this is a whole nother thing. And it's fucking 11:45. Me and you both have to get to bed.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
time is it? Yeah, I know you're an hour behind me.
Yeah, I'm an hour behind you, but I got dad duty in the morning.
Yes,
my wife goes to work for the first time in a few months.
Oh shit!
So I'm on my own for tomorrow.
There you go.
With the baby for the first time. So I mean, it's not the first time I've been left alone with a baby. I have 2 other daughters. With our daughter, and it'll be an interesting experience tomorrow morning.
Well, you'll do great. You're a good dude. You're a good dad. You got this.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You'll rock it. You'll rock it. So, but thank you to everybody in chat. Thank you, moderators, members, subscribers. Those of you guys that came over from Drunk Turkey, go ahead, moderators, make sure that you drop the link for Drunk Turkey in there. Going over there, subscribe there. If there's one thing that hopefully me and Daniel can get through to people is that you guys are allowed to have difference of opinions. You guys can have, hey, I think this, or hey, I think that. And you can get frustrated with people, but you don't have to, be crazy or be ridiculous. At the end of the day, it's a healthy debate. We're allowed to have our own opinions. I think that the moral of the story is that you have respect, and that you do it with some class and some couth. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you, Daniel, even though I'm mad that you beat me in a bet. But we're gonna bet on game 2 when the Browns and Steelers play. So, and then maybe if we play in the playoffs.
We'll see. I don't have a lot of faith in my team getting to the playoffs right now, but we'll see.
Well, I'm gonna have faith in my team. Okay.
My quarterback needs to show a lot better that he can handle the zone. Those that are Steeler fans,
he's young, right?
Yeah, he's 25, but he's in his second year already. So, like for instance, CJ Stroud is 21 and he's in his first year. So next year he'd be 22. So he's an old young player. But
I wish I was 25.
Well, yeah, me too. But
I'll take
and the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'd take that over.
Right. I'll take the money and the youth. Well, thank you so much, Daniel. Give your wife my best and go Rocket.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, and then hopefully you like that little DNA.
Oh, dude, I love that. That was
an
awesome surprise. I appreciate that.
I said if there's someone worth it, Daniel's worth it. He's always, because we were just doing one thing with Scott Roeder and he had something that night. So, But again, thank you guys so much. Be careful out there.
Like brains, and like if you need a lot of brains, you're gonna be in trouble.
This November 29th, 4 people that were murdered, and you want to fuck around. You got 8 families that are being affected by this, and they just mean nobody from the universe.
Shock value. And so what he did was he had taken pictures California.
Oh, you're from. I would be outraged if I lived in Moscow right now. I'd be lighting some cars on fire out there. I'd be flipping some cars. I'd get the frats going wild with me. Let's get some noise complaints going.